Well, hi everyone, and welcome to the pre-event to the European Health and Fitness Forum. My name is Emma Barry, and I'm wearing two hats these days. First of all, Global Fitness Authority, so advising a number of brands around the world in health and fitness. And secondly, co-founder of Good Soul Hunting, an executive search brand serving purpose-led health and fitness scale-ups, particularly leaning into technology. I am delighted to introduce our guest today, Ian Mullane. Now, we last saw each other in real life 1 year ago at my book launch, where you were kind enough to sponsor that event. I'm still getting over that hangover. I cannot wait to see you again. And thank you so much for your time today. Look, you've had 18 years in fintech, you're a founder, you're an accelerator of multiple tech-based businesses, the CEO of Keepme, which is an AI-powered sales and marketing CRM platform for the fitness industry, launched in 2019 with customers across 10 countries, going gangbusters. And you've been busy researching and writing white papers, of which this is the first that we're going to be discussing today, and unpacking the fitness future, rules of engagement, which is an industry call to arms, fantastic paper. And I know you see your role as accelerating the understanding of digital as it relates to our industry. And I thank you for that service. The audience today is predominantly traditional clubs, so we're going to be taking that lens. So welcome, Ian. Let's leap straight into it. How's the year been for you?
Oh, it's starting well. Let's put it this way. It's certainly starting better than the other one was starting in Q1 last year. So yes, all good, all good. Thank you.
Well, look, welcome. Look, let's leap straight in. We've got many changes have happened in the landscape over the pandemic times and in 2020. What do you believe of all of that that's just happened will stay?
I think the fundamental change is probably the mindset of the consumer. I think we're starting to get involved where the consumer has higher expectations. They've got a better understanding of what wellness means over what fitness means. And they're more demanding to the degree where they want to actually understand how we as operators in the marketplace will fit into their overall wellness journey, rather than maybe the previous role we've had, which has been as the temple of wealth, or the temple of health, I should say, based on the fact that that was where the majority of people went to get their weekly fixes.
Great overview. Look, we've seen the rise of digital, the digital player. What impact has this had? And let's think about the traditional club model. What has this had on operators? And more importantly, how can they respond?
Well, I think the first thing to point out in the rise of the digital player was that this was a rise that had started quite a few years ago. We're only dealing with the acceleration now. Everyone has said, I'm not the first person to say that, but I think that what we need to remember is that this is something that has been evolving, and indeed, whilst the pace has quickened, it will start to stabilize. So we'll get the opportunities to take a look at what the landscape looks like going forward. For a mid-market type operator, I think that the primary area I would want to be concentrating on is being able to differentiate what my offering strengths are in relation to the new participants in the marketplace. The consumer, as I stated before, is changing. And if we move aside from that wellness aspect and we just drill down on the fact that the vast majority of them now have a great deal more education related to their own physiological states through the utilization of wearables is a good example. I, as a mid-market operator, will want to make sure that I am concentrating on understanding how I can leverage off that fact, because we only have to look at how the digital practitioners, whether that be Apple Fitness Plus or Peloton, have got integrated metrics, integrated data, and integrated wearables in the case of Apple Fitness Plus. And that's something which I would need to understand how I can leverage that and take advantage of it.
Great, and Apple did change everything. We're certainly feeling it here in the US. I mean, with the launch of Fitness Plus, it certainly validated health as part of fitness being a part of the health game. And it's certainly going to raise awareness. I mean, and I think we have to remain focused on the fact that we're still not reaching perhaps 80% of our market. So we have a lot of fear out there. So I'm sure you're hearing this as well. Oh, everyone's going to eat our lunch. There's room for us all. We just have to do a better job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Emma, I'm suggesting complete opposite, right? So I'm suggesting that the penetration levels were stagnant or they certainly weren't growing to the levels we would have liked. We've got an organization in Apple, and they're just one of an organization, but our entire marketplace is valued at around about 1/3 of their total revenue. Therefore, Apple's not entering our marketplace to take market share. It's taking it because it believes it can make the market considerably bigger. Now, the other aspect is that the rise of the digital player is introducing the concept of fitness and wellness to cohorts that we as an industry probably have struggled to gain traction within. And I would love, as an operator, to know that the concept that I sell on a daily basis as my product is something that Apple are treating as a priority and are utilizing their significant marketing muscle, along with Peloton and Lululemon and those guys, to be able to open up these cohorts to a whole new generation and size of market that we hadn't had the success of entering over the last decade.
Great point, and I hope everyone shares that. We're really lifting the awareness game. You reference in the paper the ultimate aggregator being the mobile phone. Can you elaborate a bit on that for us?
I think that the mobile phone plays a much more significant part in people's overall wellness journeys than maybe we've given it the credit for. I think if we give the consideration to the fact that now not only can I book my classes, can I also take online classes through digital content? Can I also make purchases? Can I also be educated around the subjects? But then there's also a vast amount of physiological data, which is captured, whether it be actively or not, on these mobile phones that are the best indication for a consumer of what physical state they're in. I think we're moving from the pedometer consumer to one that is as likely to be interested in their HRV and their recovery and their sleep and all of those other physiological elements. And they're going to want to combine them into an understanding that can translate through to their weekly, daily, whatever gym visits. And that's where the mobile phone is not only a competitor, because realistically, myself, a bit of bandwidth and a desert island, and have all of the assets I need to be able to keep my fitness levels going, but also in the same respect, I present to an operator an opportunity to leverage my mobile lifestyle by putting elements into their product so that they can be leveraged further.
That's great. Let's take that a little further. You say that operators need to reimagine their position in the customer journey. So just taking what you've spoken about now, what do you mean by that?
I mean that what operators need to understand is, with them not being the sole custodian of our members' wellness overall, they need to reestablish, or at least understand themselves, to what degree they have ownership. And that's the concept of the ecosystem. That's the concept that we play one part in the overall wellness journey. And that is still a very considerable part. If we've got digital providers expanding our market 5, 10, 15, 20, 25%, that means there's going to be a lot more participants looking for the opportunity to utilize the service of operators. But to do that, we need to have an understanding of what position we're going to play in that. And that in many cases, or no, let me go down a little more of a negative. If your only play is your geographical position, your size of premises, and the expansion of the equipment you've got, your tombstone's probably only a matter of a few years away. If you're going to utilize that asset with your location and your experience, and then leverage it with the changes that we're seeing in the consumer, then you are likely to find that your business will prosper and grow over the next few years.
Great. So you're sort of taking me into the next question, but perhaps if you could elaborate a little bit more. In the new future, what would you as a mid-market operator see yourself as really focusing on to survive this acceleration in the new landscape and add value where you can?
Well, yeah, Emma, you were the one who actually pointed this out to me when we had one of our last recent conversations. Neither of us ever thought that the CES, the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, would be the place that most operators would be looking to see where their competition was coming from. But that is a reality. In my belief, operators should be starting to look at what part digital will play in their overall offering. And I need to be very clear here. Digital is not about online classes. Digital is a much broader term. And quite frankly, if I wanted the activity to be targeted in one area, it would be the utilization of digitalization so that we can hyper-personalize. And that seems like a lot of hyperbole all thrown into one sentence. So let me simplify that a little bit better. We have the capacity now at scale to personalize members' journeys so that we can move from a transaction relationship to more similar to a coaching relationship or a more holistic relationship. To achieve that, what we have to do as operators is get an understanding of what will be required for us to be able to provide that. The technology exists already. The consumer is already making the movements where I'm with Apple Health, Google Fit, etc., and their wearables. We just need to now understand how we as operators can utilize that to be able to personalize that service. Now, a really quick example, and one which has been utilized before, which I mentioned in the white paper. Current relationship with a PT is what, right? I attend 3 times a week, and probably the contract between the two of us is just don't bore me, right? Make sure that by the end of the 45 minutes, I have exerted as much level as possible. However, I wear a Whoop, I've got a Garmin, I have got a great deal of physiological data. When I turn up at those sessions, I'm in a variety of physical states. Sometimes I'm tired, sometimes I'm ready to push for PB. Sometimes, quite frankly, I shouldn't even be there, and participation is going to move me away from my goal. Therefore, how can we, even in an analog sense, bring the data that I carry around with me to help my PT drive a session which is geared towards my outcomes? Just by turning up and them saying, listen, Ian, just taking a quick look at your data here. Quite frankly, we're not going to be going for any PBs today. Let's concentrate on form. Let's concentrate on recovery, and we'll bring you Friday through to Thursday, and then we'll push then as long as we see you get some sleep. That's moved the relationship from being personal training into coaching. And you can argue that's semantics, but I can assure you when it comes to retention, that difference in relationship, that feeling that my coach, my PT has got my outcomes at his heart, is going to guarantee that I am going to want to spend longer there and less likely to move, as does 60% of the people that are in our industry every single year.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I'm just thinking around the self-management thing at the same time as I'm thinking of Tim Cook's promise to the world on behalf of Apple. You know, the gift to humanity is really health and being able to manage it yourself. The fact that I actually have a hospital and a gym on my wrist right now and actually needing to interact with it in that way. Also, the massive rise of recovery. We certainly have that front of mind at the moment with Tom Brady and longevity and pliability and all of these concepts that are out there. So go hard until you go home is really not the approach now. So people are a lot more educated, and whether it's Apple delivering it or someone at a much cheaper price point, the awareness is there now. So I think you bring up a great point. Look, just looking further into the clubs, what new roles, departments and partnerships do you see are non-negotiable in this new world for a traditional club operator?
This is one which I've been giving it a fair bit of thought to recently. You know, when I think back on that, I don't know how many I've had, maybe 100, 150 meetings over the last few years with club operators. I very rarely have ever come across someone who had responsibility for digital transformation or digital services within the organization. And that was arguably, okay, because quite frankly, making sure that your club management system and your payment processing worked was about the only role that was necessary. But we can't possibly think that when product that's being offered by digital integrates the level of personalization that it does, that we're not going to look for those same type of aspects. The market is changing very dramatically in many respects. And it's not just the fitness markets, it's the overall consumer market. The B2C market now requires levels of personalization that probably we didn't think about 3 or 4 years ago. Our music's curated, our videos are curated, our food choices and our purchases, they're all curated utilizing algorithms and AI. And there is a necessity for those same type of behaviors to exist within traditional operators. And they can. They have the core value that's necessary, which is first and foremost the reputation as a place to go to, but second, they've got the data. And that data is gold. And I know that you and I have probably been boring people for the last 12 months on this as a subject. But the reality is we've both experienced the difference that comes from operators that utilize their data to hyper-personalized service on massive scale. If you believe that's not necessary, then you obviously believe that the likes of Peloton and Apple are not going to continue to grow. And trust me, they're not trying to grow based off the product of a traditional operator delivered at home. They are making a product which is going to be incredibly personalized and at a scale that will allow them to go from 10 million to 50 million to 100 million to 200 million. I, as an operator, whether I've got 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 or 400,000 members, have exactly the same capacity to do so, along with the added advantage of the community and all of the other aspects of my time. So that is an incredibly long way of saying, I would love to see more people with responsibility for understanding how they can leverage technology within fitness operators, because that is going to be one of the critical survival skills that these organizations are going to need. I already see in Europe a number of organizations that embrace this day in, day out, and they're generally the ones that we're seeing growing rapidly, growing with repeatable business models, and growing with strength. If we want to be one of those, we're going to all have to embrace those particular skill sets.
Great. And then just a couple of extra comments I'll throw on the organizational structure just from our search experiences. We are seeing, and this was a great article by 𝐂𝐦𝐬 & Co., there is a radical flattening of structures. So we've seen during pandemic, when a lot of people were furloughed and let go, etc., the removal of a whole lot of layers of hierarchy. So that's one trend that we're definitely seeing, in addition to obviously new teams coming on in terms of digital. Secondly, we're noticing that people are doing an online and an offline and sort of a hybridization or a phygital version of what they're doing. We're seeing two teams because sometimes there are different needs for the different audiences. So we're definitely seeing that. And you just generally, there's a lot of change happening. People are really leaning into the efficiencies that technology, AI, ML, machine learning can bring. So just some of the things that we're seeing even from the people side as well. Let's now look into what could a collaboration between big fit tech and a traditional operational look like? In fact, it's existing now, but speak to that.
I think it will continue to exist as well. I mean, it's only a matter of time before Peloton moves into commercial. I've even myself today been contacted by someone within Whoop that is, and it's not because of my athletic prowess or any imminent sponsorship deal they want to give me. It's more of a case of that they're now looking at doing enterprise and corporate orientated programs. So, it is inevitable that's going to happen. I think that it's going to depend on what the operator's main business proposition is. So, in the terms of a traditional operator that's offering, the normal type of services, then the expectation would be to utilize the data for more personalization around wearables. I suspect that that's going to be one of the primary. But I think that we would be naive to assume that we're not going to start to see a great deal more connected equipment within these facilities. Now, arguably there are already providers that do that, but I'm talking about leveraging from the home into the commercial space so that I've got the capacity to continue the experience with maybe my Peloton or my Tonal or my Mirror or whatever within a commercial space, participate within those particular areas of it, and then have that one central record of accomplishments and physiological process, etc., that can be leveraged by all. So that it doesn't matter to which the person I go to, whether I go to PT, whether I go to Group X, or whether I just go to work out myself or do it at home, that all-encompassing record, which is always going to be growing in data, and then having more and more people who are going to be able to provide insights to both the consumer and the operator around the consumer's actual performance, their health, and also providing insights and ideas on how products can be developed from there. So, I don't expect, well, I do expect, and logically we've seen Equinox with Whoop very recently, but we are going to see a great deal more of that. But what we will also see is groups of consolidators, right? So there will be consolidators that will bring together data sets. We've already got one at the moment, which I'm aware of, which is bringing together wearable data sets. One of the biggest questions I get from operators is, well, how do we do this? How do we connect ourselves to the consumer's wearable? Well, the good news is I don't think you're going to have to. The infrastructure at both Apple and Android gives the capacity for others to do it. And there are already players that are taking Strava data, Apple Health data, and a whole bunch of others, so that you can sign up centrally to that pipe of data and bring down into an application that you're building or somebody else is building for you, and then have that as personalized data. Second thing, or final thing on this one, is that the market is changing rapidly. I'm not suggesting that operators that don't have either the experience, the scale, or the capital are looking at putting big technology plays in themselves. I don't want to see operators doing big offshore developments. I don't want them to be going into 12, 18-month projects. Arguably, I have a vested interest to make sure that doesn't happen. But in the mobile aspect as well, I would not want to see that. Allow the market and the ecosystem that will come from the building out of Apple Fitness and Whoop and those type of things. We will see innovation and from entrepreneurs, and they will bring products into the market. And the beauty of it is they're likely to be new participants with new ideas that have not been shackled with the dogma of history, and therefore are likely to bring new operating models and new concepts for us to consider and be able to deliver to the end consumer.
Some great advice there, Ian. And of course, building awareness takes an enormous budget. So, use those big tech companies to sort of forge the way in, and then see how you can play in that. I love that advice. And who knew data was going to become so sexy, eh? Who knew?
Well, I'm going to argue I maybe had a little idea about that one.
Hey, let's chat politics. Let's go deeper on becoming, or talking about the greater health solution. What does the fitness sector need to do to be taken more seriously? We have obviously seen a lot of lobbying from the associations, UK Active, Europe Active, URSA, etc. What do we need to do in the new world?
I think we've always had to frame the product differently anyway, and I think fortunately that's starting to happen. The selling of fitness has not been a resounding success. Arguably it's been successful, but it has not been a resounding success because penetration is not at the same level as, should we say, some of the more unhealthy habits that exist out there on that side. I think that means that we're going to have to start framing it in terms of wellness. We're going to have to frame it overall in the element of health. And I think that we need to start taking a little bit more seriously the fact that, particularly in our developed markets, we're operating in very much maturing demographics, and we're just not seeing the product associated with those demographics. So I think it not only presents an opportunity to get more 50+ people involved, it's a financial opportunity, it's a market growth opportunity. And by the way, I will guarantee you that Apple will do a very good job at that. I will guarantee you that the demographic of Peloton has still got a higher percentage in 50+ than what we see in the vast majority of operators as a whole. So I think a large element of it is going to come from the positioning. And isn't it always that way, that marketing is going to be what the driver? With so many channels available to us these days, we just need to get a little bit better at it. And, hang me, I don't think as an industry, we've been very good at it, which is why I look at what is going on with Apple Fitness Plus and the other digital providers. And I think that the offshoot, the benefit of that will be that they will find a way to make this more attractive, more habitual, and more likely to be sustaining in the long term, because they're just kind of good at this stuff.
Yeah. Ian, look, you're a fantastic storyteller. Could you paint a picture for us? Take us through a normal gym goer's journey, predicting the interplay between digital trackers and their gym activity, to give operators an idea of where they can exist in the total ecosystem.
This sounds like a nudge to what is known to be my personal setup, which is clearly a little bit more on the geeky side of life, right? So as I have identified, I mean, I even plug myself into a continuous glucose monitor, and I'm not a diabetic. So I am on the fringes, I will be honest. However, when I wake up in the morning, all of my tech, all of my thing, and I utilize a bunch of tools, are integrated together to give me a much more holistic view at any one time. So when I wake, I am prompted, and with an eye on my agenda, which my platform has, to indicate to me that I could be doing a mindfulness session, right? It will tell me and even predict which one I should utilize based on the time period I've got. My recovery score is known for the day. I'm prompted to take hydration in. And then I also have another tool which allows me to understand what my nutritional macros should be during the day as well. Armed with that information and the recovery, if I'm away on travel, my tool has the capacity to actually identify, taking into account my recovery and where I'm likely to be. And also, because I do intermittent fast, that if my fast is breaking at a particular time when my training load should start, it can suggest and even utilize my ClassPass membership to be able to identify facilities within the geography that I will be at, and then one touch and I can make that schedule. Not only that, but those actual activities are actually tuned into the recovery and the physiological capabilities that I have that day based on the data that it can see. I attend that session. I have all of the beauty of their easy to find, et cetera, because it's all coming through the mobile phone. Once I'm finished, I'm automatically prompted then to take hydration. It suggests what nutrition I may want to take. It gives me a reminder of what time I'm going to be having my final evening meal, taking into account my intermittent fasting. But in addition to that, it's also giving me a very strong indication of what time I need to go to bed so that I meet my recovery needs, having seen what I've done all day for the following day. As an operator, that can seem incredibly comprehensive. But what I have been suggesting to people is that, just start being more observant about what your members actually have on their wrists. Start to get an understanding, promote the team to ask the questions. I see you wearing a Whoop. What do you use your Whoop for? Your Apple Watch. What do you measure with your Apple Watch? Right? The capacity to start understanding this type of thing is going to allow you to not only frame the marketing message going forward, but also signal to your tribe, we understand this stuff, right? It's not a case of you turn up, we all do the same thing. We want to get involved in this and we do understand it. What I described in my journey there does not involve a massive amount of coding. I'm using everything from Apple shortcuts to IFFF and a few other things to bring that stuff together. And that's integrating no more than my Apple Health, along with my Lumen tool, my Whoop tool, and my Google Calendar, along with some additional services. I did it not to make my life easy. I did it because I wanted to understand, would that have a value proposition for going forward? And I know that if I have thought it, and I am by far not the most technically competent when it comes to actually coding. In fact, my CTO will be laughing if he gets to listen to this. What we will, however, have is an indication of what products will be in the future. So take that on board, that your consumers are going to be moving around with that type of technology. And by the way, it all comes back to the mobile phone again. Every aspect of that will be driven from this. And the capacity through 5G for us to be able to deliver that without there being any network latency whatsoever is coming, and it's coming very, very quickly. And that's going to turn these into very beautiful devices to ones which are capable of producing and processing algorithms that we couldn't possibly have imagined 12 months ago.
Mic drop moment. Ian Mullane, thank you so much for being a wealth of knowledge, for sharing so many insights and practical examples for us. Thank you for your contribution to our industry. I know that you also bet the farm during this time and walked the talk, so congratulations on that. If you have any questions, please reach out to Ian or myself. Our contact details are there for you. And we hope more than anything to see you all at EHFF and FIBO towards the end of the year. We'll see you there. Thank you so much, Ian.
Thanks, Emma.